Welcome to Because the Beatles, the podcast about the Beatles, everything about the Beatles 24/8. I'm Allison.
And I'm Erica. And before we start, be sure to follow us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, or stream us on Spotify. And if you're enjoying Because the Beatles, feel free to leave us a preferably 5-star review so other Beatlemaniacs can find us.
Also, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll be posting photos, videos, and more from this episode and beyond. You can also email us at bcthebeatles@gmail.com. And welcome to a special bonus episode. If you haven't listened to our episode from last week, which was all about Paul in Russia and Moscow and his concerts there and meeting Putin and all of that crazy, crazy stuff, go check that out. And then come back and listen to this fabulous interview with somebody who was there with Paul during that whole trip. It was so cool to get to talk to her. Her name is Aliona Muchinskaya. She was born and raised in Russia, but she moved to London 31 years ago. Lucky her. And she founded an agency called Red Square Projects. And what they do is they organize exhibitions, festivals, corporate events. She's worked in some really cool, huge projects with everyone from Harrods to Louis Vuitton, Jack Daniels, and she threw Mikhail Gorbachev's 80th birthday party at the Royal Albert Hall in 2011, which is pretty major. And as we'll find out, she accompanied Paul to Russia as his tutor, translator, assistant, and quote-unquote chaperone. And I didn't coin that. It's on the internet somewhere. It says she was his chaperone during his time in Moscow. And she's also a journalist. She'll talk a little bit about that in our chat. And in the past, she served as the senior foreign correspondent for MK, which is the largest Russian newspaper in Moscow. And so we get to chat a little bit, and super excited for you guys to hear about Aliona's time with Paul in Russia. She's got a lot of fun things to say about him.
I thought this was such a fascinating look into not only this time in Paul's career, but Paul himself and some of the funnier things that happened around this trip.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very cool to get sort of a behind the scenes look into even the documentary that we talked about last week, because she references some things that happened in there that I was curious about.
And goes a little bit more in depth into the meetings with both Putin and Gorbachev, which I thought was really fascinating.
Absolutely. So without further ado, enjoy our interview with Aliona. Thank you so much for wanting to chat today. Super exciting.
Well, I mean, it is super exciting for me. I didn't know anyone remembered about it.
A lot of us do. Do you have any memories of being in Russia still when it was difficult to get Beatles records, or prior to like perestroika, I suppose?
When I came to London, everyone knew about Beatles, but, the Beatles were not very kind of heard of and known that much because Western music wasn't welcome to Russia. And, it was like a capitalist culture, and it was something that you weren't supposed to listen. And so people were basically either smuggling some, records from abroad, if, they were lucky enough to go abroad. Or, we were learning English by kind of singing songs by some Beatles band, which we had no idea what it was. It was just total oblivion. But obviously when I came, I was 19, and it was 1991, and it was lovely time for everyone in Russia. It was like the doors were open, everyone went. It was a flow of Russians going abroad and freely with the permission to come back, and not like in 70s or 80s people were leaving Russia. It was like, they were living forever. It was like, they were flying to the moon and you would never see them. And it was just a lot of our friends and relatives, they left, and we had massive meals. Everyone was crying and laughing and it was just a totally incredible experience. So when I came to England, it was very different. We could travel, we could explore, and England just took my breath away, just swept me off my feet. Something totally different, and the atmosphere, people, the clothes, shops, it was just totally alien thing. But the most important thing, it was colorful.
Yeah, you really timed it correctly, because you left right around the time of the fall of the Soviet Union. And how did you choose to go to London?
I had a job. I was doing some modeling in Moscow, and then I got a small contract. And then I was paid, and I said that I also wanted to learn English, which surprised everyone because a few girls came with me and they just wanted to earn money and come back home and buy flats and cars and everything. And, I said, well, I will put half of my wages towards learning English. But as you can hear, I haven't done a very good job. I mean, I concentrated on having a very good time in London.
No, your English is amazing.
Finding new friends and, enjoying myself, to the extent that I never could and never imagined was possible in Russia.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, if you're working as a translator for Paul McCartney at one point, I think your English is pretty good.
Well, I wasn't a translator as such. I was more than Russian language teacher. It's a funny story. I mean, I basically received an email one morning, and the address was like W64 stroke 32 dot something, and it was just, I thought, it's a virus. I wasn't even thinking of opening it, but the first line just caught my eye, and it was like, I'm contacting you on behalf of Sir Paul McCartney. And I thought, okay, that's how viruses start. I mean, it's 100% because they want you to open it. There was no attachment, nothing. So I thought, okay, well, I opened it, and it was just a letter saying that, Paul never been to Russia, neither with the Beatles nor with Wings, and he would like to, offer this, opportunity to come with concert, and, he would like to speak to someone and kind of get an idea and understanding. I was thinking, why he wants to speak with me? It was just, honestly, all millions of thoughts were going through my head. Then I thought, of course, I mean, it's some of my friends just pulling my leg. So I just, I wrote back.
I would probably think that way too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I said, okay, call me. And then like 5 minutes later, my mobile rang and picked it up. And it was just, hello, this is, this male's voice. And I was thinking, I mean, it's not happening. I'm not being called from Paul McCartney's office. It's not, it can't happen this way. So, they gave me address, and they gave me address where it was like MPL, it's Paul's studio was in London. I was going there, and my legs were literally trembling because, I mean, I did not believe for 1 minute it was a real appointment. I was 100% sure that my friends will jump out from the bushes as I was approaching the building, and they would just say, oh, are you that stupid? You really thought Paul McCartney wanted to speak with you? I literally thought, I mean, I prepared a few one-liners, like saying, oh, well, of course I knew it was you, and then, when the door was open and there were all the guys there, I mean, I just, literally, I should have prepared myself a bit better for meeting them rather than thinking what I will answer to this mysterious friends of mine trying to prank me. But, we had a fantastic meeting, and then one of them, he was the press attaché of Paul at the time.
Was that Jeff Baker?
Jeff Baker, yes.
Uh-huh.
And he looked at me and said, can I just ask you something? I said, yeah. He said, when I received one line after I wrote you such an email, and after I received one line of answer, call me. He said, why did you answer like that? I was thinking, well, you're probably not interested. You're kind of rude and everything. And I said, I didn't think it was you. I said, I didn't have, I said that my wildest dreams, I didn't think it was you. And then I told him the story about virus, and he said, you thought I was virus. So it was just, anyway, so I think they thought I was very strange. Well, but we got on very well. And
I mean, I would have thought that it was a virus probably as well, especially with an email like that. Like Jeff Baker probably should have had a better email structure, perhaps. So how did they discover you? Did they just sort of like know people
well, they literally just looked up online, and because at the time I was literally organizing. I mean, what I was doing, I set up my small company, and I was organizing concerts. I was bringing Russian performers to the UK, and trying to bridge two cultures together. And I was like trying to organize some concerts in Moscow, and bring some, I mean, obviously not Paul McCartney, but like some, British DJs and stuff like that. So they just found me online, and they decided that, I would be like a fresh blood, and they didn't want to go through the embassies or, like this officials to make it boring. And, they just wanted someone, I suppose, young, funky, and who would tell them the truth without any obligations, because we've been talking about different things, like when people were trying to meet Paul and we were trying to organize. I mean, they were sending like lists of people who they thought he had to meet and he had to shake hands with, and they asked me, and I mean, if I didn't know who they were, I said I have no idea. But there were some people who Mikhail Gorbachev. There were a few musicians, and I just think that they wanted someone informal who wouldn't be lying to them and who will be on their side, not on the organizers' side, because obviously organizers were Russian as well, but they wanted to to have someone who would be living here. They would feel more comfortable. I mean, I've had it before, because people do feel that because you live in a country, you're kind of semi-English. I mean, I've lived here for 30 years. I mean, I am semi-English. When you want to relate few things, you always try to find someone reliable, and that's why I think they found me, and they wanted someone on their side to build that bridge between Russia and Britain.
Yeah, that makes total sense, especially knowing how the Paul camp operates, that they would want somebody who is, like you say, young and funky and making it fun for them, and maybe not on the side of the Russian government. That totally makes sense. So once you meet with Jeff Baker and the team and all of those people, how does the ball get rolling? Like, what kind of pre-planning sort of went in on your side to getting Paul over to Moscow?
I literally thought I would be just advising them on, not advising, but, maybe kind of giving them some information on, I don't know, certain behaviors, or, telling them something that, they wanted to know before going there.
But, I mentioned prepping them a little bit.
Yeah, prepping them before the trip. But I mentioned that I was a journalist and I was writing for the major Russian newspaper. And I mean, it was like literally, do you want to interview Paul? And I said, what?
Oh my gosh.
And I said, of course, absolutely. And after that, I've kind of thought that, perhaps it was like a way for Paul to meet me, because it was a tour. So he was doing it in Germany. So I had to go to Germany to meet him and to interview him. So I've flown to Germany and I've met with him, and the interview was fantastic. And the kind of, literally, it was just, as if I was talking to a long lost friend. And, he was very, very, very nice. He was just, I interviewed a lot of stars and big personalities. And, some of them were very businesslike. It was just an interview. Yeah, I promote the tour, I promote the film, I promote, some were nice, some were nothing to talk about. But, he was definitely one of the nicest people, and friendliest and very calm and funny. And he is a lovely guy. He is just a lovely guy. Friendly, nice, warm, quick-witted, always happy to, support and laugh at someone's joke, and lovely guy. I have observed him on kind of many different occasions. It wasn't all kind of cheery and, because, they worked long hours, they were doing sound checks, they were doing, learning Russian, I'm just saying that it's, sometimes you meet someone for an interview for a couple of hours, of course, this person can seem nice, but, I have observed him in different situations, and so I definitely think that he's a nice guy. We just chatted. At first I was stuttering and hiccuping from fear, but then he put me at ease, and it was lovely. And at the end, he literally was walking through the door. Then he looked back and said, "Can I ask you something?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "What do you say if I asked you to give me a few Russian lessons?"
Wow.
And I said to him, "I mean, you expect me to say no?" And he said, and because before I really flattered him. Apparently, I asked him. I said, "Well, how was it to be the cutest guy in all four of them. And he was just really kind of, I don't know, maybe no one asked him before. I mean, I don't believe it, but
I know, I've never heard that asked before. That's
and,
awesome.
And I said, and he said, no, I wasn't. I said, yes, you were. Yeah,
you were though.
Absolutely.
You were Paul.
You were the cute. Yeah, you were the cutest one. So we kind of laughed, and and he was like saying to me that I'm cheeky, and so we were kind of laughing and joking with each other, but I didn't expect that at all. So, I packed my bags and I went to, next stop was Moscow. So I flew to Moscow and was there, for prep time before the concert, during the press conference, his meeting with Putin and with yeah.
So this is blowing my mind. So when you went to Germany to interview Paul, you didn't know you were going to Moscow with him.
Well, I think that it was probably discussed, but I didn't have a clue. I didn't know about it. I don't know how many people they met before me, so I never asked actually. They might have been looking for someone, young, youth, and they're speaking English, I suppose, because back then, not probably many people lived in London who spoke good English and good Russian.
That's true.
So,
yeah.
I'm not quite sure, but, I just think, in hindsight, that I just think that perhaps they wanted me to accompany them and just to be on this side and to be, like Jeff always was saying, that, I was kind of helpful because, I could tell them what people meant, what, and because I'm a Muscovite, I knew my way around. And
you
so
could
they
be
wanted,
real with them.
Yeah, they wanted like a little spy, who would be, work for them and,
That's a spy on the other side.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you're going to Moscow with Paul. I want to know literally everything. And you accompanied him meeting Gorbachev, and you've done some work with Gorbachev before or after?
Oh, no, much after that. Yeah.
Much after. Okay.
Yes, I was there, it was his 80th birthday, and we organized a massive event in Royal Albert Hall in London.
That's so cool. That's exciting. Wow. And, maybe Paul will call you this year because it's his 80th birthday. He's got to invite you to his...
absolutely.
Which is wild. He's going to be 80. Yeah. So, okay. So you're in Moscow and you're traveling with the Paul party. And did you have any idea of did you know you're going to be meeting with Putin, for example?
I never met with Putin. No, he went on his own. He went with his wife and Heather back then.
Yes.
And Putin taught him, well, basically, we had few lessons because he said he didn't want to do any wrong, give any wrong impressions, or he didn't want to be on the wrong side of, he wanted to joke. He wanted to be, in the situation. He understood that he couldn't speak Russian, but he said he wanted to sound as if he made a lot of effort. And I said, well, let's do that.
Nice.
He basically wanted to say a few phrases. He wanted to be understood on certain levels, and he wanted to appeal to a lot of Russians.
I've got to ask because I made a note of this.
Yeah.
Have you seen, I'm sure you've seen the documentary that was made.
David Frost.
Yeah, David Frost.
Yes, I was in there.
I know you were,
I mean, like a tiny bit, but yeah.
Yeah. So I was watching it the other night and I was thinking, it's like, I noticed that Paul says two things repeatedly. And it makes sense because it's like hello, which is privyet, correct?
Yes.
And then it sounds to me like he says a lot, especially in Moscow, as he's talking to people. He says spasibo, but that means thanks, correct?
Yes, absolutely. You're fluent.
Look at me. This is great. Well, I did a lot of time on Google Translate because I was like, what's he saying? I couldn't figure it out because it seemed to me like he was walking up to people saying spasibo. Would you say that if you are walking up? Would you say thanks?
To be totally honest, I don't really remember. I mean, maybe they were giving him something. Maybe they were, I don't know, waving at him. And, you just say because, if they're clapping or, you're showing gratitude, you say, oh, thank you.
But yeah, I think there were shots of him going up to just random people standing around like Red Square. I know he and Heather were like riding bikes or whatever. And it was like, spasibo. And I'm like, I think that means thank you.
it's normal, because, he knew that people were like waving and welcoming him and giving him very, very warm welcome. Actually about those bicycles, we were talking and he said, I'm a very normal person. And he said when he lived in London and when he, was walking in a park and, he said, I love it. People come to me and they just, they want autograph. And, sometimes you have to just say, listen, I'm on my private walk. I'm at my private time. Of course, I will shake your hand. I will smile at you, but I'm not going to give you autograph because, I'm here with my wife. I'm having a private romantic dinner. And, he said, when you say it, people absolutely understand that. And I said, well, I don't think in Moscow they will understand that, Paul. And I said, well, they never seen you. You will be coming first time. It's like a massive gig on Red Square. It will be overwhelming for them and they will be overwhelmed. And he said, no, let me handle it. I mean, you will see, I will go on my bike. And I said, you will need guards all around you because, you will be... people will be like following you. And he said, you'll see, no one will follow me. And, he did go on a bike. No, but, they were filmed and, some people were watching them at a distance. But, he was right. He proves his point. I said, well, no, you will have to go in a limo with their closed windows and closed doors. And I said, no, I'm used to going on a bike and I will go on my bike.
I was stunned watching the footage of him on the bike going around Red Square because it's like, to me, the Russian people seemed very calm. I think if I would have encountered, especially, like you say, the Russian people getting to see Paul McCartney there with everything that means to them, it's like, I can't believe they weren't freaking out. They seemed very chill talking to him.
They probably have chosen few people and, they probably
maybe
slightly pre-rehearsed because on a concert, people were wild. Back then, everything was like new and incredible and was a new world was being again built in Russia. When Wall came, it was another statement that walls were coming down and it was another proof that, such a major star descended onto Red Square and the concert was absolutely enormous. The whole square was filled with people and they were standing and so those who couldn't buy tickets, they were standing on streets or prospects next to the square and it was amazing. It was probably one of the best experiences I've had. And I've organized a lot of different concerts and I've been to different concerts, but it was a concert which, I experienced from inside. I was actually on a stage. So at some point, the whole concert was made that different musicians from Paul's band, they were making like different surprises to surprise him and just kind of, it was like on every gig they were doing that. And so at some point, one of the guitarists came to me and said, well, would you like to be my surprise? So he just called me. So I appeared on the stage and, it spooked Paul completely. And we just laughed and, we just kind of were translating some Russian words. And it was just amazing.
Overall, during the trip, how did he do it with his Russian?
Well, the lessons were very structured. We tried to be as effective and, because we didn't have much time and Russian is quite a difficult language. So we decided that, it would be like quite simple phrases, but, they will be funky or they will be with slang and actually all guys from his band, they all learned few words. So it was just really funny. Basically, we started with, I said, well, how to say ladies and gentlemen. And he was laughing nonstop when he heard it totally similar to how it is. It's lady and gentleman. And it's like, it was quite easy. And we were laughing that he picked up a very good opening. But then we thought he wanted to say like, ladies and gentlemen, it's a big honor to be here. Thank you. Everything was all right. So ladies and gentlemen went like a very easy phrase until we went to honor in Russian. And he couldn't say it. Everyone was trying to say it. I think Jeff was trying to say it. No one could say it properly. So I said, well, why don't I put it in transcript? You will read it. And I wrote it. And he just cracked up laughing. He said, well, now and he was like all the time saying, how do I know you're teaching me what I have to say? Maybe you're teaching me some like total nonsense. I will make a fool of myself. I will come to the stage and I'll be saying, my name is Mikhail or something like that without realizing that I was saying that. And then he started laughing, like literally laughing. He had tears in his eyes because I looked at what I've written, and I've written chest. Honor in Russian is chest. So I put chest, and then I put an apostrophe next to T. So it was chest. And he read it as chest. And he said, are you trying to tell me that honor in Russian is breast? No, it was just so funny because when I was writing it down, I didn't think it was what it was in English. But, and I was saying, well, chest, just say this word, chest. I don't think he said it in the end.
He probably couldn't get
Too
through
tricky.
it.
No, I don't think he could, no. And we were like learning a lot of different phrases, like he wanted to address to audience and he wanted to say something like hello. Then he said, ladies and gentlemen, is not kind of, he would just say it formally first, but then he would just, after a few songs, he would play sad and he would go away and then he would come back and he would just say hello again, but so he couldn't keep on saying ladies and gentlemen. So we were thinking of different ways of greeting the crowd. And I said, well, why don't you say hello Moscow? And he said, no, I can't say Moscow because it will be televised across Russia and other people would be offended, other towns. And, and I was thinking that was such a lovely remark because I don't think anyone would, because people usually say, hello, Moscow.
Yeah, right. Any town where you're sort of playing.
But, he said, it would be, obviously, it was in his contract and he knew it would be televised, that people would be upset, that like if you're living in...
that's very thoughtful.
Yeah, and I was thinking it's so sweet, and it's like shows what kind of really nice guy he is. And then we basically settled to hello Russians. I just said, well, I think that majority of people in Russia consider themselves Russians. Obviously, you can say a lot of different nationalities, but, he basically implied that, he came to Russia to sing for Russians. It was a very nice opening line for him. And then he went to meet Putin. And Putin taught him another phrase. Yes, he said he taught him how to say hello, guys. And
very informal.
Yes. And when Paul came back, he said, unfortunately, Vladimir said he couldn't come to the concert, so I thank him, let it be. So he doesn't feel left out, and he doesn't feel that, the fun will be happening without. So, and I said, yeah, well, anything else? And he said, well, yeah, he taught me a phrase, and he said he taught me how to say hello, guys, and it was "Привет, ребята." So "ребята" is a kind of informal way of say guys. It was very funny because at some point during the concert, there was a VIP section, but there's a space between VIP section and the stage where there's some photographers and I was like staying there and Jeff was kind of nearby because, he wanted to enjoy it informally and see how people react and everything. And at some point, I just realized that all these photographers and their videographers, they were like somehow moved into the line and there was like a corridor being made. And there were a lot of security, guards walking up and down. And I thought, president must have changed his plans because it was no way that anyone else would be coming through that corridor, through the VIP zone, I mean, I don't remember what it was, but, I think I was trying to warn Jeff that Putin was coming because I realized, I could hear, people were with walkie-talkies and, saying, yeah, it's clear, come. I kind of ran across that corridor to Jeff to tell him that Putin is coming. And those guards, they just jumped on me and just kind of got my arm.
My gosh.
Behind me. And Jeff, he saw it. He just thought I was being attacked by some
Oh my gosh.
Some violent Russian militia guy or someone. I don't even know whether he thought it was militia or police or anything. So he just jumped on this guy and started screaming that, that I'm working for,
Oh
he
my
should let me
gosh.
go. And there was another, and I was like saying, I was saying, stop it, Jeff, Putin is coming, we don't have time, we have to clear the place. Honestly, it was such a commotion, and and
I
it was
bet.
only because I decided to kind of make it better and forewarn everyone and just to bring everyone's attention that Putin is coming here. Well, because they didn't, because they didn't hear, and I did hear because it was all in Russian. Anyway, so he came, started on his space in the middle of this VIP section, and Paul saw him and said in English, "Oh, I can see we have some addition to our audience." And then he looked, at Putin and said, "Привет, ребята." And it was, it was really funny. Everyone
That is
laughed,
funny.
and everyone thought Paul welcomed Putin in this way, and only Putin and Paul knew that actually Putin taught him that phrase. So it was a bit of an in joke.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And, of course, it's like wild watching the documentary now and seeing the reception, that Putin gets. And, I was pretty young when the documentary came out. I was in high school, I think. And I, was growing up in the Midwest here in the States and didn't really know much about Russia or politics or anything. And I remember thinking like, oh, this Putin seems like a great guy. Like he's just chill. Like he comes to the Paul show. Like he's hanging out with Paul. Like he's good. He's good. And how the times have sort of changed. It's makes watching the documentary that much more interesting to see how the sentiment is when he walks into the show. People just go crazy.
Well, I don't know. I mean, to be totally honest, I just think that it was, well, I mean, when a president or a prime minister comes in, I just think people, naturally welcome him. And, I just think that people were like really warmed up already. And it was like a massive party underneath a Moscow sky. And it was just incredible atmosphere. And this, so I think they would welcome anyone. But, it was nice that, he came, and we all knew that, he wasn't supposed to come because Paul told us. It was a surprise, and it was it was a nice gesture, I suppose. I thought everyone was pleased.
Yeah, right. I imagine it would be just adding to that frenzy. And Jeff Baker, when he talks about it, he talks about how he thought that Putin sort of timed it to be there after Paul played back in the USSR because he didn't really want to acknowledge that the Soviet atmosphere in which that song was written. But then Paul played it again when Putin showed up.
I just think that, Paul he said it was a great concert afterwards. But, I just think that it's, you sometimes get the sense that, people do what they love. And they love what they do, and it was exactly, it was happening on that stage and that square in Moscow on that night, because Paul enjoyed himself. You could see that, he was, he was working, of course. I mean, it is his, work, but you could see he enjoyed himself. His band, they were like really having the time of their lives.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
People in Moscow, they could eat from Paul's hand. They're like forever. It was incredible unity and fantastic understanding of certain, I don't know, values or certain maximus, that very substantial and very important to everyone. So it was just a night of freedom, night of collaboration, unity. It was an absolutely awesome atmosphere there.
I bet. I just wanted to ask, we talked a little bit about Gorbachev before. Were you with Paul when he met Gorbachev?
Yes, Paul actually asked me to stay there because also Gorbachev, he speaks a bit of English. It was quite a funny episode because Gorbachev brought his granddaughter, and, he walked in and he said, "Paul, you know me? And here's my granddaughter. She surprised us." And he was like, Gorbachev is like a also very warm character because, he is not that kind of stuck up guy. He is warm, and he is kind of, I don't want to be misinterpreted, but he is kind of one of the guys next door. You know what I mean? He's like a simple guy who achieved a lot and who did a lot for the country. But, he's quite simple without being, pompous or stuck up. So, he came to him, said, hello, Paul, you know me. And here's my granddaughter. She just surprised us, got married very young. I've got you a few presents. So, he got him his book. It's like a big, like a Bible type of book, and gave it to Paul. Said, well, you will read it for the rest of your life. Then he said, I've got a little present for your wife. I know you remarried recently. And this book is about my wife who died from cancer. He loved her dearly. And, usually Russian presidents, they don't demonstrate the kind of feelings. But, Gorbachev definitely was the one who you could see really cared for his wife. And, we have a strong respect to him for that, I think, because, he was very human. He said, well, I've lived with mine for 37 years. I loved her a lot. And we lived for 37 years without TV because we couldn't turn our faces from each other. So, and then he said, so I know that you married too. I know you love her too. And please, can you give her this little bouquet of flowers? Tell her that I grew them myself on my outside house outside of Moscow, my dacha. What we call it. It's a little house outside of big city. The story afterward, I mean, they shook hands, and McCartney said to him that, you are a great guy. And Gorbachev really was quite surprised. And he said, you really think so? And he just kind of, nodded and left.
That's such a sweet answer.
No, it was sweet. And after that, Heather appeared, and or maybe Paul told us this story because Gorbachev said he met Heather at some point somewhere, and Paul told us that Heather brought a joke that Gorbachev told her. He told her that he was asking whether she knows any Russian jokes. And Gorbachev said, well, I'm the most famous character for Russian jokes. So, don't you know any jokes about me? And she said, no. And he told her that, there's a massive queue. And you probably know that in beginning of 90s, we had like this shortage of everything, bread, meat. And, we had everyone queued outside of the shops. So there's a massive queue, that goes on for hours and hours. And then the next day, people come back and keep queuing. And there's no meat, they're not closer to the shop. It's still a massive queue. And there's no end to it. And so one person in a queue looks to another one and says, you know what? I've had enough. I mean, this life is not worth living. It's all because of Gorbachev. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and kill him. And the whole queue says, yes, well, you're right. Rightly spoken. Go. You have to go. Kill him. So he goes and, the whole queue supports him and, they carry on standing. So like 5 hours later, this guy comes back and, this queue just said, oh, so what did you do? Did you kill him? And he said, the queue to kill Gorbachev much longer than this one.
And Gorbachev told this to Heather.
Yes.
That is so funny. He must have a great sense of humor about himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time so much. Thank you so much for chatting with me.
No problem at all. Honestly, I'm really happy I was given a chance to relive this adventure.
Well, it meant a lot to me, and it's going to mean a lot to my co-hosts and everybody who listens. So it's really cool to talk to you. Thank you so much. All right, you guys. Well, we hope you enjoyed that chat with Aliona. She was so much fun to talk to. Thank you so much, Aliona, for speaking to us again and for sharing your memories with Paul. That was just like a total joy. to experience that adventure with you through your words. And for all you guys listening, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Because the Beatles. And as always, follow the show on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening right now. Please give us a rating review so other Beatlemaniacs can find us.
And follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll be posting photos and more from this episode and beyond. Remember, you can always email us at bcthebeatles@gmail.com too. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.